So I'm happy to be with you today to talk about a really important topic, maximizing team performance. My presentation today will take about 45 minutes, and we will definitely allow time for questions. So if you take a look at your communication box on the right-hand side of your screen, you can pose questions there. And anytime, feel free to pose a question, and as I see those, I will address them when appropriate. So let us hop right in. So today we're going to cover what we call team success factors, and there are 5, and these are the success factors that are essential for teams to maximize their overall performance. Then we're going to explore what we call the accelerators that drive the results. So these are actionable things that you could do to improve your team success through the success factors. Then we're going to have some time for questions. I like to call it yeah, but, because a lot of times as leaders, it's not just about having questions and answers, but it's really about, yes, that makes sense, but. So I want to make sure that we have some time at the end to address whatever questions, observations, reflections that you have. So when we think about team success factors, one of the things that we have to be mindful of as organizations and as businesses, in order for us to be successful, in order for us to have that competitive edge in this global environment, average is no longer acceptable. So as leaders, we must help our teams perform at their very best. And to do this, we must have a framework in place in order to help us manage that. The framework that I'm going to introduce to you is what you see on your screen, the team success factors. This handout is also on your right-hand side, so where you see handouts, there's 3 of them. There is a document, so if you want to print this off, you certainly can, to have in your offices and hang it. But it covers all the 5 elements that are essential to maximize your team's performance. We will walk through each of these different elements and give you some key takeaways to help strengthen each of these team success factors. One of the things that you have an opportunity to do as well, and it's included in the attachment, is a team success factor survey. What this survey does is it helps you to assess how strong you are in each of the team success factors, where are your areas of opportunity, and you can then identify which team success factor do you want to hone in on in order to maximize your team performance. So I would really encourage you to take an opportunity to complete that survey. I would say do a pre and a post, so take it now, and then when your team has had time to work through each of the team success factors or the areas that you feel like you need some help, 6 months down the road, I would say take it again to see how well you've progressed. So the first success factor that I want to spend time talking to you about is process. So as you know, we have 5. We're going to talk about process, trust, results, commitment, and communication. The process team success factor is probably the most straightforward in each of the team success factors. It is the direct line to increasing your team's efficiency and effectiveness. And the way that we're breaking down process in this realm is 2 ways. One element is work processes. Your work processes outline what must be done to accomplish the team's purpose and goals. These processes detail how tasks are to be performed. So that's one. The second is your team processes. Your team processes specify things such as how meetings are conducted, how decisions are made, and a lot of times people will liken this to your culture. So what type of culture do we have within our environment? So when we're talking about processes here, we're talking about work processes, and we're also talking about team processes. I want to share with you a really helpful tool, and this is also in the attachment. It's called a team charter. And many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with team charters, but this is a nice format because it really breaks down each of the different elements that are essential for a team to really be successful. And so when we talk about process and you're about to embark upon a new process or a new change, it is really important that you have a team charter. So if you want to take a moment to open up the attachment, the team charter attachment, feel free to do that, or you can kind of follow along as I talk through them. The team charter is broken down into several sections. The first section is the purpose. So this is the why are we here? Why do we need to exist? who should be on the team, who makes sense to be on the team. Sometimes when we are about to do a new process or a change, we don't have the right people on the bus, and we don't have them in the right seat on the bus. So the charter, the purpose section really helps to make sure you have the right people on the team who's really going to make sure that whatever it is you're trying to accomplish is accomplished in the most effective and efficient way possible. Here it talks about as well, what are the organizational goals the team supports? So what is it that we're trying to impact in the organization or in your business? So is this team together because we want to impact customer satisfaction? Or is this team together because we want to launch a new project? And then how the team adds value to the organization or to the customer. So as a result of this team being together, how do we add value? If you're in a larger organization, this is really important because a lot of times we have to show ROI. So when you can identify where you add value to the organization, that really helps to put your project or your process or your new change in a very palatable way for your executives, because now you're linked. You're linking the strategy that the organization has to the body of work that team is going to be working on. So that section is critically important. The accountabilities are, what are our team responsible for accomplishing? So what's in scope? What's out of scope? What's our main responsibilities? So if we're trying to improve our customer satisfaction, what are we actually accountable for doing? What are the different tasks, duties? What is the output of the team? So that's the accountability section. The next section, which is really important, is the goals, action steps, and performance measures. So what do we want to achieve, and how will we achieve it? And how will we measure our success? As organizations and as businesses, we fly past this part of it. But what this section does for you is it gives you the specificity that you need to accomplish your goals. So what is the goal that I'm trying to accomplish? So let's say, just for simplistic reasons, I want to improve my customer satisfaction. So improve customer satisfaction. How will this be measured? It'll be measured through our internal customer service survey. So what are the action steps we're going to take in order to improve our customer satisfaction? It could be we're going to conduct focus groups, or we're going to send out a survey, or we're going to do one-on-one interviews. So whatever the action steps are, you would list each of those there. And we can't forget about the next piece that's so important, because what happens is you have someone who's incredibly talented on the team, and their name is actually one that's listed under the who. So you look at the list, and that one person is listed all the way down in that column. We don't want to do that. We don't want to burn out our team members. So we want to make sure that we diversify the work based on the skills that people bring to the table. So who's going to take care of organizing the action? The focus groups. You would indicate that there. Who's going to do it, and by when are they going to do it? So what's our goals associated with it, and what resources do we need in order to make sure we're successful? What resources do we need? So if you have multiple goals associated with the particular process that you're going to be going through, there's several spaces there, and it's a Word document, so you can type in the Word document. And the question on page 4 is, how will we make our results visible? So how will you communicate the progress that you're making? Whether you're a small operation or a very large operation, making those results visible keeps people connected to the why behind the what and the purpose. And it keeps the excitement going, because they're seeing how we're progressing towards this audacious goal that we set at the very beginning. So how will we make it visible? Will it be on a communication board? Will it be sent out via email? Will it be included in our monthly newsletter? So you want to establish how results will be visible to the organization. Will we provide updates to the board? In what fashion will we provide those updates? Is it just an executive summary? Do we want to provide it in a PowerPoint presentation? So this is where you can get real clear about how you're going to communicate the results. The next section is ground rules. How will we operate and function as a team? How will the team approach the work? How will we treat one another? How will we make decisions? Your ground rules can actually be established once your team starts meeting. I like to see teams establish their ground rules Sometimes it's a little too early to establish in session 1, but definitely by session 2, you'll want to have a conversation with your team around ground rules. This makes sure that everyone's on the same page moving forward, and there won't be any misunderstanding. And then the last section is meetings. How often will we meet? Where will we meet? Who's going to facilitate it? Who's going to take notes? Who's going to distribute the notes? So this provides a lot of clarity for the team. So really, 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 really good document. So I would encourage you to put that in your toolkit as a document that you could use. So when we think about process, and we think about, we got one success factor, which is the team charter worksheet that would really help you to improve process. But what I have in front of you here are what we call accelerators, if you will. And what accelerators are actionable things that you can do in order to improve each of the different team success factors that we're going to talk about. And I'm not going to talk through each of these because you see those in front of you. And I'm happy to provide these slides later, or if you have a camera phone and you want to take a picture as these come up, feel free to do that as well. The one that I want to point out, though, is define work procedures and revisit them regularly to identify opportunities for improvement. Whatever process you decide to put in place within your business, you want to make sure that you have a procedure or a way to revisit those on a regular basis. Rather it's a formal weekly meeting, or rather it's a communication strategy you have that you're going to send out an email every week to check in on how things are working out, connecting with your team to say what's working well and what's not working well. So you want to make sure you bake that into your process to make sure you're checking in or revisiting how things are working. The next element I want to point out is spreading work evenly, considering people's abilities, motivations, and strengths. We have people who are huge high performers in our departments. We know when we leave the office, we can breathe because we know that they're at the helm. We don't have to worry about anything. We don't have to stress about anything because we know they have it under control. But a lot of times what we do, the way that we reward high performers is we give them more work to do. And we want to avoid that with our high performers because we don't want to burn them out. And so you want to look at the talents across your entire team to see who's strong in what areas. So you have your team charter that outlines who's on the team, but you can also define what gifts and talents are they bringing to this particular new process that we're trying to implement. And if you find that they have a gap, then you want to make sure you give them the tools, resources, the support, the training, the coaching to help fulfill that gap so that we're not burdening our high performers. And you don't want to take it on yourself all the time because you have other things within your business that you need to focus on. So you have to maximize the gifts and the talents on your team. And if you find that you have people who are consistently low performers, and no matter how much time you invest in them, they're still not performing up to par, then you want to have a different kind of conversation with them because your business deserves the absolute best that it can give. And if you have people who just aren't pulling their weight for whatever reason, whether it's just not a fit or they just don't want to, whatever the case might be, you may have to have a different kind of conversation if they're dragging down the ship, if you will. So those are some process accelerators to consider to improve processes. So here's a thought that I want you to consider. What processes might you want to establish or improve with your team members to help them work more efficiently or effectively together? So that's just something I want you to think about. And you can jot it down if you're taking notes, but I really want you to ponder that. What processes do you want to put in place in order to improve how your team works together? All righty, we're going to transition into our next couple of team success factors. So the first one we just covered, process. The next one that we're going to talk about is results. But before we talk about results, it's important for us to ensure that we've established an infrastructure for which we can achieve our results. So many times as organizations or businesses, we jump right to the result, but we haven't put in place, one, what is the goal? What are we ultimately trying to accomplish? And how will we measure our success? So if our goal is to achieve exceptional client satisfaction, what is going to be our measure of success for that? What tool are we going to use? And what's the metric? Is it that we want to improve it to the 85th percentile, or we want to improve it to the 90th percent? Whatever the case might be, we have to be clear about what that is. Then I like to call this particular element milestone timeline. And what that is sometimes we have very audacious goals as organizations, and it takes us a couple of years to fully realize that particular goal. So what I like to encourage leaders to do is put together a milestone timeline. So if we're trying to launch a new product, what do we want to accomplish and it's going to take us a year to do it or 2 years to do it? What are we going to do as an organization at 6 months? What are the different what's our milestone at 12 months? What's our milestone at 2 years, whatever the case might be, 18 months, and then 24 months. So you want to have those milestones in place, because sometimes if you're looking at a 2-year, 5-year goal, that could seem overwhelming. But if you put it into smaller bite-sized pieces, it makes it much easier to try to accomplish it. Then the other element you want to make sure that you consider before we start talking about results is our tactics. What are the specific tactics you're going to take in order to help you achieve your goals, which will then get you the results? If you use the team charter worksheet, these will be outlined for you seamlessly. So I would encourage you to use that document. The other piece that we don't talk a lot about is reward and recognition. So as we think about results, what are we going to do to reward and recognize great performance? If we've achieved our milestone goal, what are we going to do to celebrate that with our team? So many times as business owners or as business or leaders within organizations, we move so quickly. Change is happening so rapidly, and we want to make sure that we take a moment to slow down and reward and recognize great performance. We also want to make sure that we take the time to talk with people if we're not quite meeting our goals, and be very specific about what the gaps are. If we don't have those elements in place as we kind of move towards our results, our outcomes could be misaligned. Not everyone's on the same page, and then we'll see a lack of commitment to our cause. So we want to make sure that we are explaining the why behind the what, what's the goal, how are we going to measure it, what's our milestone timeline, and what are our tactics, and how are we going to reward and recognize. So when we think about the accelerators that are associated with results, the one that I want to point out is revisit and adjust roles, responsibilities, goals as priorities and tasks and projects change. Our worlds are busy, and there are so many things that compete for our time, and there are so many things that we want to accomplish. We have to be mindful, though, that we can't do everything all at the same time. And so when you start to see different priorities competing with one another, you want to take a moment to pause and prioritize and begin to shift your projects. Because if we don't shift our projects as priorities change, we compromise results on all of those projects because we're trying to juggle so much. And so you want to press the pause button, sit down with your team and say, okay, we've just gotten another project added to our plate. Or we have another goal that we want to accomplish. Let's look at what we currently have, and let's prioritize what we want to continue to work on, or what do we need to put on the back burner until the other projects are complete. That is so important. We have to manage that cadence of change for our teams, or else we burn them out. And we don't want to burn them out, and we don't want to compromise our results. The other piece that I want to outline on this results accelerator is involve the team in establishing and monitoring progress and outcome measures. How are we involving our team in communicating results? If we're the only one that can articulate what the report is telling us about our results, then we need to rethink that. And the way that we kind of shift the mindset of our team is involving them in putting out a process or reporting out progress, if you will, and communicating outcome measures. And what that does for you is, one, it keeps the team committed to the goals that you're trying to achieve or the results you're trying to impact. And two, it makes sure that they understand exactly what it is you're trying to achieve, and they can put it in their own words. So let's say you have a weekly huddle or a weekly call, or you guys are however your communication methodology is. Have one of your team members lead out the huddle and talk about the results that you've achieved, however often you measure it, whether it's on a monthly basis or it's on a quarterly basis. You have your team report out. And that way you are very comfortable and confident that they understand, one, what it is that you're trying to achieve, and that they are committed to achieving it. We're all in this thing together. So those are two that I really wanted to point out. The others are important too, but I really wanted to point out those two. Few things that I want you to reflect on. What causes your team to lose focus from their priorities? So remember, we talked about results, and that there are times where there are so many competing priorities that we lose focus. And so I want you to reflect on what causes your team to lose focus from their top priorities. The second question is, what can you do to keep them focused? What are some things that you as a leader can do to keep them focused? And the last one is, what might you do as a leader that could distract your team from their top priorities? That's an aha moment for me, because a lot of times we don't hold up the mirror to ourselves to say, wow, this is what my contribution is to the current state of my department or the current state of my business. So this provides us an opportunity to take a step back, have an out-of-body experience, if you will, for a moment to say, I can see how I might be contributing to my team being distracted, because sometimes I run in, I'm so excited about a new service line that we're going to offer or a new product that we're going to offer that I just dump it and I say, okay, we got to do this by next week. And what it does is it leaves the team wondering, okay, do you want me to work on this new thing you just gave me, or do you want me to work on the other 10 projects that you gave me? So we want to be mindful of how much we're giving our team, and that's just one example of how we might distract our team from their top priorities. So that's some things that make you go, I just want you to ponder that for a little bit. The next success factor that we're going to talk about, we talked about results, so now we're going to talk about communication. High-performance teams set and follow ground rules that ensure effective communication. They are very intentional about it, and they leave nothing to chance. So when you think about teams that you've been on or organizations you've been a part of that have had awesome communication, what were those things that they had in place? One of the things that teams often put in place in terms of ground rules, if you will, is how will the team listen to each other? One of the downfalls of a lot of our departments is we don't have good communication, and which causes conflict. So when you establish ground rules, you may want to consider incorporating an element that speaks to how will we listen to each other. Another element you may want to consider is how do we express ourselves when we have differing opinions. How do we discuss and evaluate ideas and communicate openly with one another? So there are several ways that you can establish ground rules or get everyone on the same page in terms of how you communicate. Here's one idea that you can consider. Schedule a meeting with your team. And the purpose of the meeting would be to establish your communication ground rules or communication strategy, whatever phrase you feel most comfortable with or resonates most with your team. It doesn't have to be quote unquote ground rules. Before the meeting, ask the team to generate a list of communication ground rules or strategies they feel will be helpful for your team based on your realities. You could give them some ideas to kind of get their thoughts going around what to come up with. So some of the ideas you might throw out there is, how will we listen? How will we participate with one another? How will we be open? How will we be respectful? So once you put that list out, they've started generating some ideas. When you come to the meeting, what you would have them do is then present their ideas to the entire group. Now, you're going to get a plethora of ideas. If you have a small team, you might get, if you have 5 people, you might generate 20 ideas. If you have a larger team, you may generate a ton more than that. But you can't do all of those. That's not feasible. So you want to distill that list down to about 5 or 6 communication strategies or roundels, however you want to call it. And you can distill it down by doing a process that I think is effective called multi-voting. So you would give your team colored dots. So depending on how many ideas you want them to vote on, you would give them the corresponding dots. So if you got 20 ideas, you might give them 4 dots. And then they can use those dots to vote on their top 3 or 4, how many ever dots you give them. And then that'll distill your list down to the top items that your team feels is important. And not only can you do this for this team success factor communication, you can do this for a number of different things that you want to generate ideas and then quickly distill it down to your top items. Once you've come up with your top 5 to 6 communication strategies, then you want to spend time with your team to determine what actions the team will take to follow those rules. So it's one thing to put it around and say, we will listen effectively to each other. But you want to take them a step further to say, what does effective communication look like for us? And so what that may look like is, well, effective communication looks like for us is that if we have a challenge with one of our colleagues or one of our peers, we will go to them directly to address the concern. Or if I want to reward and recognize a colleague, this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to communicate it. So you want to take it a step further and define what does each of those elements look like in action for your team. Once you've done that, then you can document it and publish it so that everyone will know this is what our communication strategy is, or this is how we do business around here related to communication. It also serves as a way for you to onboard new people coming into your business or to your team and say, this is how we communicate, this is how we make sure we have open, honest, trusting communication and interactions with each other. So the accelerators here, I love the one that says, practice the zero surprises policy by ensuring everyone shares relative information in a timely fashion. Life happens and we get so busy there's certain information that we should share and it slips our mind to share it. So you want to make sure that you have some type of practice, a protocol in place that supports you in sharing information timely. And not only just you as the leader or business owner, but also for your team, when they know information, what is the vehicle you're going to use to share that information in a timely fashion? And I'll take that a step further to liken that also to the performance evaluation process. When you're communicating and giving feedback, that should be on a consistent, timely basis. Your team should not be surprised when they receive their performance evaluation. There should be no surprises. So whether you communicate to them about their progress, what they're doing well, what they might want to consider doing differently, whether you communicate that quarterly, twice a year, you want to make sure that feedback is consistent and timely. And you also want to encourage team members to ask questions for diverse thinking, and this is the last communication accelerator. Don't be afraid to call on someone to share their perspective. So you'll have people who are very shy, very smart, but just not as open to sharing their thoughts and perspectives. This might be the case with a lot of your introverts. They're processing and processing and processing their thoughts, but they're just not putting it out there. So it's okay to call on them and say, you know what, Becky Sue, you haven't said much. I'm interested in your perspective. Do you mind sharing? Just so that you can get diverse perspectives and ideas. A couple of things I want you to ponder. Again, each of these are some things that I want you to think about in terms of improving and if you're doing it well already, to continue to do the things that you're doing well. Where have you seen a breakdown in communication? Is it when we introduce a new process? Is it when the team is having challenges with one another? Is it when we need to reward and recognize? Where do you see the breakdown? What differences and expectations might team members have about communication? If you decide to go the route of establishing a communication strategy, when you generate ideas, that helps to make sure, and you guys vote on those and you agree on them, that helps to make sure everyone's on the same page in terms of how you're going to communicate. The last item is, what actions can you and your team take to improve communication? Again, if you do a team multi-voting type experience, that's one step in helping you to improve communication and not leaving it to chance. All right, so let us transition to commitment. Building and sustaining commitment is what we call it. If we want to see commitment within our organization, whether it's commitment to a change, a commitment to our cause, we have to ensure that we are doing a great job at communicating the why behind the what. The why behind the what is our purpose. We're doing this because instead of just telling our team, you have to do this, just do it. We want to make sure that we are improving our patient satisfaction or our customer satisfaction because we want to be the premier provider of X in our region. And if we want to be the premier provider of X in our region, then it's important that we undergo this particular project. So you want to give them very detailed explanation about why you're doing what you're doing. This drives commitment. And so you have a couple of ideas there as well on ways to build and sustain commitment. There's another a couple questions too that you can consider is, what are some effective behaviors that our teams have, and what are some ineffective behaviors that our team have? And when you look at those ineffective behaviors, you can begin to ask yourself, how is this impacting commitment? And then you can begin to work at different ideas on helping to improve the commitment. Another piece that helps a lot in this section really talks about the importance of working together as a team. So, and I'll read this right off of your screen. Helpfulness drives commitment. The amount of help team members give each other is the single strongest predictor of team effectiveness. How well do we pitch in? Do we say, well, that's not my job, I'm not doing that? Or do we say, you know what, we are in this thing together, let's roll up our sleeves and let's get it done? So working together really helps to improve team effectiveness. How often people help one another predicts efficiency, quality, creativity, customer satisfaction, and profit. High-performing teams invest time in coaching, teaching, and collaborating with peers. And so to achieve that high-performing status, what are we doing to invest in coaching our team, teaching them new and innovative and creative ideas, and building a culture that's all about collaboration? So here's another question pounder. How will you know when your team is fully committed? So I'm going to give you a couple of ideas as it relates to commitment and how you know your team has reached that pinnacle. They have defined roles and responsibilities with an understanding of each other's contributions to the team. So people understand what their role is, and they understand what everyone else's role is on the team. They regularly engage in balanced, timely feedback. They agree on deadlines and keep their commitment to those deadlines. They seek and offer help to each other, and that was, stated in the previous slide. And they recognize each other's contributions and achievements. So when you start to see these different behaviors and actions, then you know that you have a team that's fully committed. I'll quickly run through those again if you were taking notes. First one is define roles and responsibilities, and people understand their role on the team. Balanced and timely feedback. Agree on deadlines and keep the commitments to those deadlines. Seek and help each other to achieve their goals. And recognize each other's contributions. All right, let's move on to our final team success factor, which is trust. I love this quote. Trust is like air. You don't notice it when you have it. When it's not there, it's all you notice. So it's one of these where you with trust and respect and things of those natures, you just it just happens automatically for you. You don't notice it, but when it's not there, it is absolutely all you notice when it's not there. So as leaders, we want to make sure that we create an environment that is safe for people to speak openly and honestly with each other. When you have trust on your team, the things that you will start to see and experience, or that you already experience in your team, if this is a success factor that you're really strong at, is willing to freely and respectfully share thoughts and feelings. So if you look at your department and you notice that, yeah, my team, they speak very openly. They have no problems whatsoever speaking their mind. Another element is individuals don't assume, but check things out first. So they give their colleagues the benefit of the doubt. They don't make an assumption about ill intent. Sometimes within our teams, people say, oh, they did that because they just don't like me, or they did that for whatever reason. But people that have high trust within their team, people don't make assumptions. They give each other the benefit of the doubt and say, I wonder why. There has to be a reason why they made this decision or made that decision. So they go down the path of exploring that openly with their colleagues. People with high trust address conflicts timely. And you will notice that there's just a feeling of having a safe environment where people aren't tense. People can sit down and have conversations and dialogue with each other. The nice thing is, next week's session with Joe is going to be all about conflict resolution. So I'm sure he's going to provide you with a lot of great ideas on how to begin to resolve conflict within your work environment. So if you can, make sure you tune in next week to Joe's session. If you're wondering how to assess whether or not trust exists or how strong it is within your business, there is an assessment, and if you're interested, I'm happy to email it to you. There's an assessment that you could do to assess how strong trust is in your team. And so if you're, like I said, if you're interested, I'm happy to send that to you. Once you complete the assessment, you can identify a couple of different behaviors of the team that you want to focus on to improve it. But what you also want to do is celebrate the things that your team already does really, 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 really well. That's really important too, to celebrate what you do really well and then focus on 1 to 2 things that you might want to do to improve. The other thing that you could do, if you just say, Tish, I really don't want to take a survey. The other thing you could do is just sit and watch. If you just sit and watch like a fly on the wall and see the interactions within your office, are people, upfront and honest with each other, respectfully? Do people come to you openly and share with you things that is different than how you think or feel, but they feel comfortable enough to come to you to say, I know that this is the route you want to take, but here's something that you want to consider. So do people come to each other openly? How do your team interact with others? If you're working within a larger organization, how does your team interact with other departments, if that's applicable? So you want to just sit and watch what is the tenor of the department to determine if there's a high level of trust or not so much. And if for some reason trust is a challenge, this is one of those accelerators that's a challenge for your team, here are a couple of ideas that you can consider. I already mentioned one, which is the facilitate conflict resolution by coaching team members to resolve issues. So many times our team will come to us and say, can you address this issue with X? I don't want you to say anything. I just don't know what to do. So in that case, it's about helping them to be effective at resolving conflict with each other so that you're not always that in-between person. And if you tune in to Joe next week, he'll give you some strategies and techniques on how to help your team resolve conflict with one another. And the other piece is the micromanaging piece and avoiding that with your team. And this is a lot with leaders who came from staff to leader, and they look a lot on looking at every single step, making sure that they know every single step of the process. And what it does is it deteriorates trust with the person who was assigned the project. And so what we want to do is state the goal. Here's what we want to accomplish, and how they choose to get there is up to them. But if you're concerned with how successful they will be, then you can set some times in place where you say, okay, I'm going to check in. Let's check in every week. I want to make sure you have all the tools and resources you need to be successful, and then just let them do their thing. And that way it helps them to be more confident about what they're doing, and it helps to build trust in relationships with your team. So just a little something to ponder. What one or two behaviors will you focus on improving to show your team that you trust them? And how might this impact the team's performance? I think that second question, we all know what that is. But the first part of the question, what one or two behaviors will I focus on to show my team that I trust them, that's pretty significant. So if you could take some time to process through that, I think that you would see huge benefit, and your team will notice that. So just as a recap to our team success factors, we have trust, results, commitment, communication, and process. So if you have all of these elements working together, then you can ensure that you're going to have an effective, efficient team that their performance is always optimal because all of these different elements are at play. Some of us are stronger at some than others. Some of us have all five going and we're great. Some of us may have two of the five, or whatever the case might be. Now you have some tools on assessing which of the team success factors you're strong and which ones you might need to do a little work. And then you have those accelerators to help influence some change and improving those different areas. So I am going to pause, and here's just a little action step around things that you could do once you leave depart each other's presence, virtual presence, if you will, some things that you can do as takeaways moving forward to exercise those muscles. So I'm going to pause and address whatever questions you have. So I want to hear the yeah buts. What are some things that you say that sounds good, but here's my challenge? I'm going to pause and answer any questions you might have. So you can start typing them in that box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we can start addressing them. If you have the question, a ton of other people are going to have it too. So go ahead and ask any questions you might have. Really good question. Of the team success factors, what would you say is the most important and why? With each of the team success factors, each of them are really important. If I had to pick one just based on my experience, trust and communication are the two that are, to me, are really essential, because without trust and communication, it's really difficult for teams to achieve their results and even have a conversation around how to improve processes. So if a team can really hunker down and build that environment that's safe for people to speak openly and honest with each other, and have a great communication strategy in order to facilitate communication throughout the department, I think that would be, those to me are the ones that are really important. But that's just my personal, based on my experience and what I've seen with leaders and teams. Thanks for that question. That was a really good question. Any other questions? I have a question for you then, if anyone wants to pose one. What are one or two takeaways are you taking from this session? What are one or two things that resonated with you that you're taking away from this session? All righty. Well, hopefully there are some ideas that, here's another question. If trust has been damaged, what can you do to start repairing that within the team? If trust has been damaged, what can you do to begin repairing that in the team. The first thing is to acknowledge it, that trust is a challenge. One of the things that I support leaders a lot with doing is, as a neutral party, coming in and spending time with the team to understand what's at the root of there being trust issues. Why did it deteriorate in the first place? If trust is a challenge, people are not going to be very open to talking about it because they're not sure what's going to happen with it. So if you have someone who is a great facilitator of conversation, one-on-one, because if trust is an issue, they're not going to talk in a small focus group, and then could communicate that information back to you and then begin working towards that and bring the team together to talk through it, that is very effective. Another thing that you could do too is an anonymous survey, and ensuring that it is truly, truly anonymous, because if there are trust issues, people are going to think, okay, there's some way they're going to figure out it's me. I'm not sure what's going to happen with the information. So you want to make sure that you establish it in a way that is completely, completely anonymous. Don't have them handwrite, because they're going to think, oh, she's going to figure out my handwriting, or he's going to figure out my handwriting. So figure out a way that you can gather that information anonymously. Once you then have the data, whether you had a third party spend time with your team or you do the survey, you take the data, compile it, and say, here are some of the challenges that we expressed as a team moving in that has been a challenge for us. What can we do moving forward as a team in order to reestablish our relationship and our trust within the department? One of the techniques that I like is called start, stop, continue. So what are the things we need to start doing? What are the things we need to stop doing? And what are the things we need to continue doing? So that's one process that I find really helpful with teams. It's called start, stop, continue. And it provides a safe way for people to have conversation. So really good question. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we'll give it one more minute in case people are, oh, there it is. Oh. All righty, so I think that concludes our time. If there are no other questions, what I want to encourage you to do is tune in next week, the 24th from 2 to 3. And we've teed this up for Joe to talk a little bit about conflict management next week, so please make sure you spend some time, if you have it, with Joe during the webinar next week. If for some reason you need additional support as it relates to the 5 team success factors and interventions on reestablishing trust or whatever the case might be, here's my contact information, and I'm happy to support you and help you in any way. I do complimentary consultations, so if you just want to talk through some things, I do complimentary consultation. So if there is nothing more, enjoy the rest of your day. Have a fabulous weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon.